Welcome to Estate Planning with Crypto Assets, presented by me and Ryan here at James River Law. I'm just going to go over the agenda for today, which is we'll do a brief introduction, talk about the three real solid components of estate planning with cryptocurrency, which are custody, planning, and administration, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. By way of introduction, my name is Alex Mejias. I am the managing attorney here at James River Law, and I handle business, general counsel matters mostly focused on technology and cryptocurrency, but I also handle some IP and entertainment matters as well. Ryan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name's Ryan Glaser, and I am the estate planning attorney at James River Law. I assist people with all aspects of estate planning, both planning for their death and for incapacity, as well as assisting both family members that have a loved one that dies, with an estate plan, and those that have to go through the probate process administering their loved one's estate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. So the overall goal when we talk about estate planning in general, and specifically with cryptocurrency, is that we want to secure the cryptocurrency and create a plan that will allow it to be safely and efficiently passed on to the next generation so they can experience the full benefit of a life-changing asset. And one of the reasons why estate planning, when you have cryptocurrency, is so important is because it is a revolutionary new asset class. It's only been around for about 11 years, and it's already seen just astronomical growth. And we have no idea what the future will look like. But if the last 10 to 11 years have been any indication, we could be in for an incredible ride. And a lot of people, even folks who are just casually involved in cryptocurrency, could see staggering returns. And our goal is to help our clients leave that legacy for the next generation within their family or for a charity or whoever they want, but so that the next generations of folks who are coming along will be able to fully benefit. And because it is such a new asset class and it requires a level of technical understanding, it really is something that needs to be planned for. Just a quick stat, an estimated 3.7 million Bitcoin is lost forever, which right now is about $240 billion worth of value. And that's just for Bitcoin. And every year there's an estimated about 4% of the newly minted Bitcoin gets lost. So that's quite a lot of value that gets lost. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the different ways that it can get lost. And so it really is something that you have to be careful about. So the first building block when you talk about crypto estate planning is custody. And custody is just, how is it stored? How are you storing your crypto? And why does this matter? Well, because there are two principal threats or risk vectors. One just being external threat. So your account or an online exchange account getting hacked, your funds being frozen by a third party, someone seizing it. So there are these external forces that could come and get your crypto. But then there's also just genuine, really, we didn't know what else to call it, but sort of self-sabotage where you lose a PIN, you lose a password, and you have lost the ability to access that cryptocurrency. And we see these sort of horror stories in the news every once in a while about someone who had their cryptocurrency on a hard drive that died, or that had their keys stored somewhere and they've lost them and they no longer can find them. I think there's a famous story of a guy who has a hard drive in a landfill in Canada with hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin that he's been begging the locality to let him try to excavate. So it is a real risk. And so when we talk about, when we work with clients, the very first thing that we do is we ask them, how are you custodying your crypto? And we do an audit and we do a custom plan to determine what that should look like. And really when we're talking about custody, we're talking about this concept of a wallet. So what is a wallet? It's a very simple concept. It's basically two components, and this is sort of breaking it down to the simplest terms, which are, one is a public key, which is basically your mailing address. So where people send crypto to. If somebody wants to send you ETH or Bitcoin or any other coin, you have to give them your public key, your address, so that they can send that to you. And then the other component is your private key, which is your digital signature, which is the thing that proves that you're allowed to send that Bitcoin to a third party. And that's what a wallet does. It actually stores your private key. And so really, it's probably better to think about a wallet as a keychain and not necessarily like as a wallet per se. And the sort of the cornerstone saying within Bitcoin and all crypto is not your keys, not your Bitcoin, which means that if you're not in control of your private keys, you really don't control that cryptocurrency. And we'll see what that looks like in a second. So back in the day, the old way of storing your crypto was on what was called a paper wallet. And I think this is actually like a great way of showing you just the most simple form of a cryptocurrency wallet, which you can see that there's a QR code and a public address, and then you can see that there's a private key. The one of the bit address one is for Bitcoin, and then the other one is for Ether. And so that is at a rudimentary level all that a wallet is. And back in the day, people used to print these out on their computers, and they would send money, crypto to the public address that was listed on that piece of paper. And I've personally dealt with clients who have been holding hundreds of thousands of dollars of Bitcoin on a paper wallet just like this. And for a lot of reasons, that is no longer the way that we recommend storing your cryptocurrency. But really, and this is a very packed slide, and so I'll try to break it down as best I can, but really now there's a sort of a very wide variety of options of how cryptocurrency can be custodied. And when you look at this list, sort of the top of the list moving down is sort of the higher external risk of other people being able to access and take your crypto. And then, but on the contrary, as you go down, there's a lower risk of self-sabotage because on the top end, you have someone else who's custodying your crypto, so that there's less chance for you to lose it. But as you move down and you're sort of custodying the crypto, there's a higher chance of self-sabotage. So it's a little bit complex to understand, but essentially there are two factors that you have to weigh when you look at these different options. And then that line in the middle is really sort of a demarcation between, on the top end, what I would consider custodial wallets. So you're giving custody to someone else, and then a non-custodial wallet when you're keeping custody. So on the top end, I would say the highest external risk you can have is custodying your Bitcoin with a non-US exchange. So someone who's outside of the reach of United States law enforcement, and you're basically sending your Bitcoin to someone in another country that honestly, there's not really a great enforcement mechanism should they decide to just hold on to your crypto forever. And moving down, there are US-based online exchanges where they're also custodying your crypto. They are subject to regulation, and you can go to their offices, you can sue them in the United States should anything go wrong. So that's a little bit less risky, but you are still entrusting your crypto with someone else, and these exchanges could be hacked. Also, I threw in apps with there. So like when you think of like a Cash App or Venmo or Robinhood, that's basically like a mini exchange where you're purchasing cryptocurrency, and it's a custodial wallet. And then these used to be used more, but they aren't really used anymore, which would be like an online custodial wallet. If you've ever heard of blockchain.info, they used to have a wallet where you basically created an account and you just logged in, and that was actually a custodial wallet where they were controlling it, but they would allow you to withdraw it from their wallet. Then there are browser-based hot wallets that are non-custodial, and I'll give a couple examples of those. Mobile wallets that are also non-custodial, and then single signature wallet, which you all may be familiar with, of sort of like a Ledger or a Trezor wallet. And then down from there is what's called a multi-signature wallet. And I'll explain what that means in a second. And then there's even like a level even further that we don't really recommend, where people are taking like a plate of steel or metal and they're sort of imprinting their private keys onto it and sticking that somewhere, which is sort of like an updated thought on like a paper wallet type concept, but that has a lot of risks, so we don't typically recommend that. Some exchanges that you may have heard of and maybe not. On the left are some non-US exchanges, and this is not an exhaustive list. I just grabbed a couple of HIT, BTC, KuCoin. The US based online exchanges, again, there are more than this: Coinbase, Gemini, Kraken. I put a question mark by Robinhood because even though you can purchase Bitcoin, you actually can't withdraw Bitcoin. All you can do is cash out your Bitcoin. So they're not really giving you any Bitcoin. You can't really purchase Bitcoin. You're sort of getting exposure to Bitcoin. So if you are using Robinhood, just know that like that's not something that is available, at least as of now, where you can pull out Bitcoin itself, whereas in some of these other mobile apps you can. Some of the browser-based wallets that you may have heard of are MetaMask, and these are actually local to your browser, so they're not connected to a third-party hosting, and custodial wallet, but they're actually local to your browser. So like they are not technically a non-custodial wallet, but they are a hot wallet in the sense that it is connected to the internet. And oftentimes, particularly if you're looking at NFTs, you will use one of these to be able to sign a transaction to pay for an NFT on, say, like OpenSea or something like that. MetaMask is for Ethereum, Phantom is for Solana, Yoroi is for ADA. And then there are some mobile wallets that are non-custodial. These are, again, just a couple of examples. Green Wallet is a leading Bitcoin wallet. Samurai is a leading Bitcoin wallet for Android. And then Blue Wallet is actually a Lightning wallet. But there are lots and lots of wallets. The one thing I'll say about mobile wallets, really be careful, do some due diligence on the wallet before you just download it onto your phone, and make sure that it's a legitimate company. And ideally, if you're in the US, that it's a US-based company. Hardware wallets I mentioned earlier, these are just a couple examples. And these are little devices where you plug it into your computer, and there's some software that you can download that allows you to interact and sign transactions. But when you're done, you generally unplug it. So it's not a hot wallet, it's cold, it's not connected to the internet. And that can be stored somewhere. We would recommend, obviously, a safe or a safe deposit box to store that. So that's kind of an overview of the different types of wallets. And like I said, when we work with clients, the first thing that we do is we try to help them come up with a custody plan even before they do their estate plan. And that's because you want to mitigate these risks, the external risks and any risk of self-sabotage. So you really, every person has to like do some evaluation and think through what is your perfect fit. So usually the factors that we look at are how much do you have? Obviously the more, the higher the value of your cryptocurrency, the more secure you would want it to be, the more you want to de-risk it and keep it maybe off of exchanges, for instance. The second is like your technical proficiency. How well are you and how comfortable are you with using these different devices or moving the money around yourself? And we've had clients that have a large level of cryptocurrency, but they have a very low level of technical efficiency. And so they really don't feel comfortable self-custodying it. So in those situations, it might make sense to still use a third party to custody it for the ease of use. And then finally is the timeline. The longer that you want to hold on to it, the more we think that it makes sense to get it and sort of get it into more of like a non-custodial situation. And if you have a short timeline, for instance, it might make more sense to just leave it on an exchange if you know you're going to be cashing it out soon. But overall, you want to sort of follow, 3 basic guideposts, which is you want it to be secure. So again, find something that works for you where you're not placing your full and complete trust in a third party. Something that's simple. Don't get too cute. Don't try to be too fancy. And that's where self-sabotage comes in. You know, back in the day, some people tried to get really cute. Well, they would take that paper wallet and then they would break the private key into 3 different pieces of paper and store them in 3 different locations. And that is a absolute recipe for disaster. Because each one of those 3 papers, now you've tripled your risk essentially, because if any one of those gets lost, stolen, smudged, burned, it's a total loss. So you really need to try to not overcomplicate the situation and do something that you won't be able to remember. Trying to memorize your private key or your seed phrase is also a terrible idea. You want to make sure that it's easily accessible to you as well. So again, along with like simplicity, you want to make sure that it's somewhere that you can get to without too much trouble, and that like is accessible both for you and your loved ones. One thing that I will say about these hardware wallets, typically the way they work is that they have a PIN that allows you to unlock the wallet. But they also have what's called a seed phrase. And a lot of wallets, particularly all of the non-custodial wallets, will come with a seed phrase. And a lot of people don't understand what that is. Really what that is that's like a backup to your wallet. So let's say you have a ledger and it has 1 Bitcoin on there and you lose it or it's destroyed. Well, as long as you have the seed phrase that you use to set that up, you can buy a new ledger, use the seed phrase, and it will restore that wallet and allow you to access that cryptocurrency. So that's one of the benefits of having one of these hardware wallets, is that they come with that seed phrase. And so as you're thinking about custodying it, guard that seed phrase with your life, because that is the most important part of the wallet. That is how you know that you'll always be able to have that crypto, and you want to keep it separate from the wallet itself. So now that we've created a plan, we've created a custody plan, it's time to do an estate plan. So just want to give a very quick overview of like what an estate plan is, but I think it's important, and Ryan, you can jump in on this as well, is that it's not just a will. It's really a complete set of documents, a playbook, and a guide for a variety of circumstances. And for us, we consider it a must for hodlers out there. So at a minimum, when you're holding crypto assets, you want to have a specific bequest where you're specifically, and we'll talk a little bit about this when we get to administration, you want to make sure that your executor or your trustee has the right powers, that you've given them all of the right powers. And there are specific powers that you need to give them in order for them to have full access to your crypto. And then we also do what's called a crypto memorandum, where it's a separate document that accompanies your will, that provides a blueprint and instructions for how to find and access your cryptos, that it's kept separate from your keys. And it usually at the minimum names a trusted and neutral third party who your loved ones can go to and ask for help. And those are sort of the basic components. There's a little more that goes into that. But essentially that's what the purpose of the crypto memorandum is. And it's important to keep in mind that most folks that get into crypto, they have that experience of falling down the rabbit hole, but they usually don't take their loved one with them. They usually don't take their spouse along for the ride. Just speaking from personal experience, I've been into crypto and I've been working in crypto for years and years and years. And I think my wife probably in the last 6 months has been like, I kind of get it now, maybe. And that's a pretty common experience for folks who are married or who might have kids, where their loved ones haven't spent the time and they need someone to spoon feed and hold their hand through the process. Again, because if something were to happen to you and they don't know where your crypto is, or they don't know how to access it, it's functionally lost forever. Ryan, did you want to say anything else about estate planning while we're talking about that, in terms of what an estate plan is?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, one of the important things is that the modern estate plan doesn't just plan for end of your life, it also plans for incapacity. So that's something that I think we should also mention because, especially now, but even without COVID, people get sick and you never know what can happen. The cryptocurrency market in particular is pretty volatile. It changes every day, every second even, and so you don't want to miss an opportunity to take advantage of a potential windfall of cash because you're incapacitated either. So that's another reason why it's important to have these executory powers listed, or I would say fiduciary powers listed, because you can also name a power of attorney to have these duties to handle these digital assets as well. And then, yeah, obviously the crypto memorandum is something that we specialize in providing our clients. And Alex and I have recently dealt with a client who he had drafted a crypto memorandum for their estate, and unfortunately they passed away. And because we had been able to help them with making this memorandum and custodying their crypto when their family came in, who were not technologically, people, they really weren't into crypto at all and would have been completely lost without our guidance, and especially without having any type of directives from a crypto memorandum, and that would have been lost. So it's so vitally important to make sure that you plan for this in your estate.
Yeah, thanks. So Ryan is going to talk a little bit about, briefly, a little bit about the wonderful world of estate administration. So we've talked about developing that plan for custody. We've talked about having a comprehensive estate plan. And this is sort of what happens on the other side. So this is for folks who might have a loved one who recently died with crypto. But this sort of, I think it's important to look at like what actually happens on the other side of these things so that you all can understand why some of this stuff is so important. So Ryan is just going to give us a little bit of a brief overview of estate administration, and then we're going to look at some hypotheticals before we get to some questions.
Yeah, great. So basically, in a nutshell, estate administration is the process after you pass away of distributing your assets and accounting for your assets involved in your estate. It involves a period of marshaling, which is a period immediately after someone passes away, in which the named executor or administrator is going to be tasked with collecting all the assets, both tangible and intangible, and notifying financial institutions and any type of other organization or place that any types of assets are owned by the decedent. And along with those executors, they have fiduciary powers and duties. And you can now name a digital executor, and that's someone that you can expressly name in your estate plan that will grant them the ability to handle your digital assets. And they are also held accountable with as a fiduciary, which means that they have certain duties that they must perform, and they must avoid doing things like self-dealing. They have a duty of confidentiality. They have a duty to manage the estate appropriately and in a way that maximizes the estate to the best of their ability and maintains the bequest and the funds of the estate as well. And those are powers are delineated in the revised Uniform Fiduciary Access to Digital Accounts Act, colloquially called RUFADA. And RUFADA was drafted in order to grant some of these powers to help allow fiduciaries in managing an estate deal with these sorts of assets more effectively. and also put a process in place to protect certain information from a decedent, such as communications in particular, and to also set a hierarchy of how to determine, the rights and liabilities attached to certain digital assets, and kind of where to look for those rights and duties. So under Rufata, in a cryptocurrency context, the systems are the management systems are the highest authority regarding who can, if crypto can be transferred, or how it's going to be allowed to be transferred, or entitled, and things like that. And so now some of these exchanges and things are allowing for beneficiary designations to be made. And because they are just like any other financial institution can name a beneficiary, they are the highest authority on that, and that trumps any type of will, bequest, or gift that you may leave of that asset, that digital asset. And then if there is, if the estate administrator or executor or digital executor has gone and, realized that there was no named beneficiary through any type of exchange or through the management system itself, then it goes to your estate plan, which is one of the reasons why planning is so important. And that will be the controlling document. And it's important that, even with Rufata, you still need to put into your plan expressly, meaning you need to write it down and specifically grant certain powers to individuals so that they're able to handle this administration as effectively as possible, that they're able to do their job.
And I will say, just to interrupt you, sorry, really quickly, that a lot of the exchanges are catching up to this. So like they've, for a long time, they would not allow you to name a beneficiary. And I believe maybe half of the US exchanges are there now. So this is a very real issue that can come up in terms of certainly dealing with a non-US exchange, but even within the United States exchanges, this could very easily come up. So sorry, continue, Ryan.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then in the absence of any kind of directive from the actual authority, the management system, and an absence of any type of estate plan, then the terms of service are going to be the controlling kind of baseline for how things are going to be transferred and things like that. And it's important to understand that even under Rufata, just having possession or control does not mean you have ownership. And a lot of that goes back to your service agreements, which are those like long agreements at the end when you sign up for an app, or when you sign on to an exchange or anything like that, that no one, the terms and service agreements, those are things that people rarely read, but they can become vitally important, especially in a cryptocurrency context. And as I mentioned, just, for example, iTunes. So you might have possession over the digital asset of like music that you've purchased from Apple, but you actually are not the owner of that. You actually have a lease for life in those songs that you purchased from the App Store or the iTunes. So just because you have possession of that person's computer or possession of that person's crypto key does not always necessarily mean that you have ownership at that time. So that's something that I think is important as well. That's one of the reasons why we keep talking about a memorandum as an addition to your estate plan. And that's because that is the only way to effectively transfer the crypto without running into any issues or having to fall back and be at the liberty of any of these terms of service agreements. And so next, I'm just going to talk a second before we get into our hypotheticals about probate and administration, because cryptocurrencies are treated pretty much like a cash would be treated. And it does need to be accounted for in an estate, if it is included in an estate, because it can have a bearing on estate tax consequences. And so if there is a ton of cryptocurrency, especially, it definitely needs to be accounted for and can be subject to probate tax. And probate is expensive. It takes a long time. It is a process where you're really at the liberty of the statutory code and the courts. And going through probate takes anywhere from 6 months, which is a very, very small estate, to 2 years and beyond. So that really drags out this whole process of, taking care of your assets and fulfilling your final wishes. And so if you can avoid that, then, everything goes a lot smoother, and you can avoid reducing your estate by paying all these other types of fees and attorney's fees and court costs, or having to be bonded or anything like that. Regardless of whether or not you have a will, or if you don't have have a will and everything has to go through probate, which unfortunately happens very often. As I mentioned before, whoever you name as your executor has the ability to, or has the duty to, start marshaling your assets. And so this is something that's important, because this is where a lot of, I guess the right word would be, I feel like deception is a hard word, but there's a lot of room for nefarious things to happen during this time, because it's a very emotional time. Usually you have loved ones that are dealing with their loss, but at the same time, there can be other people that are less involved in the emotional part, and really more interested in the assets of the decedent, and if they have access. So if they have passwords already, or if they know where certain things are and they are not protected in some way, like a two-way authentication or something, then a lot of times the assets go missing from an estate, and it's very, very hard to get those assets to be brought back into the estate after they've disappeared. And with crypto, it's the same. It's kind of the same way. I mean, if you had written down on a sheet of paper and you didn't rip it up and split up your wallet, and someone has just access to it, they might be able to steal that pretty easily. So you want to make sure that you have these extra securities in place to avoid that being able to happen. And then, yeah, just like I said previously, just like any other asset you have, whether that be cash or other personal property like boats or jewelry or stocks and bonds, all of that has to be accounted for in the probate estate. Or cryptocurrencies are also included with all of those. And some people don't really understand how it fits in, but as of right now, that's how the law is treating it, and that's how probate treats it. And so now that we know a little bit about probate, that we want to avoid it at all costs, and how important it is to have all these processes in place, we're going to go through 3 hypotheticals, and I will kind of start and read through the hypothetical, and then Alex can go ahead and start dissecting it, and I can chime in with any other estate administration or planning tips or suggestions I have along the way. So hypothetical number 1 is, John is a crypto enthusiast who started buying Bitcoin and various altcoins on US and non-US online exchanges in 2015. He's married and has 2 children. His children are in elementary school. John's wife is not very tech savvy, which we've talked about. Usually there's like one person in the family that is really involved in the cryptocurrency world and is really into it. I found that most people that have a good amount of crypto in their portfolio are people that have just like really fallen down the rabbit hole and gotten really excited about it and are super into it. And generally that doesn't pass on to their family members. So basically John's wife, like so many, doesn't have any idea how crypto works. John's crypto trading has yielded him crypto holdings worth over $500,000. Pretty good day. And then unfortunately, one day while out motorcycling to work, John gets into an accident and dies. I'm going to warn you, that's how all of the hypotheticals end. Someone dies. So just be prepared. John doesn't have a will, which we know is never good, and holds his crypto in exchanges on a hardware wallet. So what's going to happen to these crypto assets? You want to go ahead and start talking about that? I guess we can point out the various issues starting from the top.
Yeah, sure. And Ryan, you'll definitely be able to weigh in on this in terms of what his wife is going to have to do. So the first thing that I'll say is that, so his wife is now in a position where she has to figure out how to do everything. Like his children are young, they're minors, they're probably not going to be able to figure this out. So now she's kind of left on her own. So there's no will. So right now he's got coins on a US exchange. So the coins on the US exchange, like Ryan said, we work through that hierarchy. If they have a named beneficiary, she could probably present like a death certificate and get access to those. If they do not, then she's going to have to go and get qualified and try to get those assets from them. But more likely than not, she's going to be subject to their terms and conditions because like I said, like Ryan said, there's that hierarchy. First, is there a named beneficiary? Do they provide for that within the system? Two, are there legal documents giving her those powers? If those two things are not there, under Rufata, she's looking at the terms and conditions for that US exchange. The non-US exchange, she's in the same boat. And I don't even know what she would have to prove or show to them, but there's a good chance that those could be lost. The crypto on the wallet, again, she would have to figure it out basically herself and have to figure out how the wallet works, how to access it, how to download the software, how to do everything. She's going to have a really tough time, and she doesn't have anyone to turn to. In terms of getting some of those, of even getting the power to handle these assets, what would that process look like for her, Ryan?
To get power over the assets, I mean, she would have to, if it's gifted in the will. So there
is no will in this scenario, remember. Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't have a will. Okay, right. Yeah. So basically she would have to file to qualify as an administrator of the estate. And when she does, she would do that in the locality of where they lived at the time of death. And then once they get that certificate of qualification, then they would have to submit that along with a death certificate and proof of identification to the financial institution or the exchange. And then that would show that they have power over the estate. And then hopefully at that point, they are granted access to the accounts in order to administer the estate.
And again, and that would be subject to the terms and conditions at that point.
Absolutely, right.
So
exactly.
And then I think one of the bigger problems could be, depending on how much is on the hardware wallet, she's got to figure out how to access it, how to move it, which can be very difficult and it can be very risky, and then how to change that into US dollars. So she's going to be in a really difficult spot. And if she doesn't have someone to turn to, there's a very high likelihood that some or all of that Bitcoin could be lost. So this is sort of our nightmare scenario that we always want to avoid.
Yeah.
You want to read the next one?
Yeah. So hypothetical number two, Matt and Kim were married in 2020. They decided not to spend a lot of money on an estate plan and used legal doom, I should say, to draft a basic will. The will did not include any provisions related to the access of digital assets or provide any information about cryptocurrency. So later that year, Matt began investing in cryptocurrency and had about 500,000 of crypto on Coinbase, a US-based exchange. He held another 500,000 worth of Bitcoin on a Ledger hardware wallet. Kim was not involved in the trades again, and but she was aware that he had a large amount of money in crypto. So she knew that he had it, but she didn't really understand it. One day while rock climbing, Matt fell off a cliff and died. You got to be careful out there. So what happens to his crypto assets?
So at first blush, it seems like he's in a better place than the John in the first hypothetical, but really, how much of a different place is she in, is Kim in than the first one?
I mean, yeah, so she's in the same place. Unfortunately, there's no memorandum, there's no direct bequest of the crypto to her or to someone else. There's no powers granted under RUFADA, providing them the power to deal with the digital assets. So it basically ends up passing to the residuary of the estate and then into probate. And then she's at liberty of, going through that hierarchy again, where first she has to see, well, maybe did he have a beneficiary, which we know, is not very likely. Like Alex said, they're offering it more on these exchanges, but it's probably 50-50. And even with things that regularly have named beneficiaries, people still forget to name a beneficiary on those. So it's very unlikely that there was a named beneficiary in this case. And then because the document, as we said, the will is not inclusive, it doesn't expressly delineate the powers and duties and grant those under RUFADA to have a digital executor handle those types of assets. And then they inevitably end up back at square one, where they're at the liberty of the terms of service agreements. And they have to go through the probate process, pay a bond, qualify, hire an attorney, do all of those not fun things, and then submit that to the exchange in hopes that they'll be able to have access to the full wallet.
Exactly. So even when you have a plan, if you don't specifically provide for some of these things, you're essentially in the same boat as someone without a will. So kind of crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, you always want to make sure that you we often give our clients when they come in a deficiencies checkup. And if anyone is interested, we can send that to anyone that wants to just do a quick review over any estate plan that they currently have. But it's important, and especially because a lot of these laws, like I said, RUFADA, that was adopted by the Virginia code in 2017. So if you had a will or an estate plan that was put in place prior to 2017, then it's probably not going to touch on any of these issues regarding digital assets or cryptocurrency. And so you're definitely going to want to take a look at that.
Yep. All right.
So hypothetical 3. Sally heard about cryptocurrency from a friend and purchased some crypto in 2019. She purchased the crypto on a China-based exchange where it sat for over a year. In late 2020, she moved her coins onto a hardware wallet and had an estate planning attorney at James River Law draft a cryptocurrency memorandum with it. The memorandum provided the location of the crypto, instructions, and named a neutral third party to assist. In 2021, she died, leaving all of her crypto to her husband, who is not familiar with cryptocurrency. So what happens?
So in this scenario, this is where you want to be if unfortunately, you do pass away. So in this scenario, she's got an estate plan. Her husband has got all of the right powers. He's got it's her she moved from a very risky place in terms of her security of having all of her crypto on a Chinese based exchange and moved it onto a hardware wallet with instructions for her loved ones. So step one, she de-risked the whole thing. She brought all of that value into a place that was secure and simple. And then when she passed, her husband would have access to the document. He would know where the cryptocurrency was. He'd be able to access it because he has the access codes. And really, because that he was named, he takes the cryptocurrency and he can use the trusted third party or not. But he has everything he needs to access it. He doesn't have to go to a court. He doesn't have to go to an exchange and ask them for anything. Pretty much day one, he has that and it's fully available to him, and he can move it around as he sees fit and as he needs to. So really, this is the best case scenario. Was there anything else that you wanted to add to that, Ryan?
No, there is one other thing that people should consider, especially because you have, and this is kind of separate, but it has to do with taxes and something to consider with cryptocurrency in particular, because it is a asset that can overnight sometimes go from being worth very little to being worth a lot. People don't really think about it as keeping it long term, but as it becomes a little bit more stable, a lot of people are planning and adding it to their portfolio and planning to have it for a long time. And if you have it go from, let's say, $1,000 to $10,000 in value overnight, you're going to be taxed on that 9,000 increase. And it's a stepped up basis. So when you pass away, it steps up to that 10,000 and eliminates that 9,000 taxable increase completely. So sometimes it might be more tax effective to hold on to that particular your crypto asset and leave that to a loved one to avoid having the huge tax implications. And then they can choose at that point either to go ahead and cash it out for US dollars, or wait and see if it grows some more. But that's just something that we didn't mention that I think is important to mention as well, because it goes into the planning.
Absolutely. And so with getting that stepped up basis, having the immediate access to the cryptocurrency then has a huge value, because if you have the option to go ahead and cash it out, and then you have zero tax burden. Whereas if you have to go through that process, now you're in like a 6-month or longer process, and over that time, there could be an increase, which is not a bad thing, but then that comes with a tax burden. So really being able to access the crypto on day one has a lot of value, and that's really the goal for us, is to be able to provide a plan that allows your loved ones to immediately take possession, and then also be able to control that without having to go through a court, without having to rely on an exchange, US or foreign. And so that's really kind of this is the best case scenario. Obviously, we don't want anyone to die or anything like that, but when you pass, this is where you want to be. So this is the goal for us. So so in summary, remember these 3 components: custody, find your perfect fit, what works for you based on how much you have, what your technical proficiency is, and then what your timeline is. Once you have that set, get your plan in place, get it together now, don't wait. And then within the administration, whether or not you have a plan, it's always a good idea to find a neutral, trusted third-party helper. And there are law firms like us, but there are also like crypto security firms and custody firms out there that will do this for you as well. One thing, watch out for scams. And remember, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. Almost every week we get a call or an email from someone who has lost Bitcoin on an exchange that they didn't properly vet, or someone reached out to them on social media, or an Instagram account was hacked. It's real, and you got to be so careful. And again, even if you're someone who is not going to be fooled, your loved ones could be in that position. And again, having those instructions, having a neutral third party to help them avoid some of these same pitfalls is absolutely critical. There are so many scams, and the way that the crypto world works, these are one-way transactions typically that cannot be reversed. So there's no one that you can go to. There's no Bitcoin Inc. that you can go to say like, hey, someone, it's not like a credit card. Can I have my money back? No, it's gone. And we've had folks that have lost, $5,000, $50,000, over $300,000. And the result is pretty much the same across the board. So just always stress that in every single presentation we do, is just be careful.
We're always available to answer those questions via email. And then also be sure to like us on our social media and follow us for more updates on the law and crypto and estate planning in general.
Yeah, and we'll plan to do more of these. I think this is a good topic to kind of just refresh on a regular basis, because there can be like changes to the law. So we'll plan to do this. So if you have anyone that that has missed this, just tell them to check out our YouTube page or keep an eye on our website, and we'll be continuing to have this type of a seminar in the future. So
Awesome.
with that, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you for attending. And if you're watching this on YouTube, thanks so much for watching it. Please feel free to contact us if there's anything that we can do to help. We're here to help in any way we can. Thanks so much, everybody.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Take care.